Thank you, Bianca, so much for joining us today. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat, and we can get to them after her talk. Just as a brief intro, Bianca is a solution architect at Amazon Web Services, and today she'll be talking about Solana's key differentiators from other blockchains. So the stage is all yours, and thank you so much.
Thank you for the lovely introduction. So hello, everyone. As Anthony mentioned, I'm a solution architect in my day-to-day job, and in my free time, I'm a blockchain technologies and tech content creator. I first encountered the blockchain space around 2017, and since then, I've been constantly amazed by the agility and innovation of this space. In this session, I want to talk about Solana's key differentiators from other blockchains, and namely how to create the framework that helps you assess different blockchains. I came with this framework myself. It's simple, yet I consider it very powerful. These are really the minimum basics in order to evaluate different blockchains, but you could add a lot more. So what I want you to get out of this session, it's an invitation for you when assessing a blockchain to identify what are the key characteristics of that blockchain, and then to match them with the trade-offs that enabled those results. And you will see in a minute what I'm talking about. So this is for the agenda. First, we're gonna look at how this framework looks like. And then we're going to use the framework in order to evaluate Solana, and at the end, we're going to draw some conclusions. I won't go through each of these right now because I'll take them one by one. So the first one, it's decentralization, governance, and token distribution. So too many people think that blockchain is some magical technology which makes a decentralized network. In truth, this technology only enables decentralization. So meaning that it allows cryptocurrency to work in a decentralized manner, but it does not provide any guarantee that it will work like it. So it's actually some external factors that determine the actual level of decentralization. Technology itself does nothing to ensure it. So it's a mistake to assume that if it's on a blockchain, then it's decentralized. And to give you an example, if you're thinking about Binance Smart Chain with 21 validators and validators holding the voting power, I wonder how decentralized such a network truly is, and that's only one example. So depending on the token distribution, the governance model, and all these factors, you can have different shades of decentralization. Another thing to consider is the number of nodes. So the more nodes, the better for a decentralized system, of course. But then you're asking yourself, okay, but who owns these nodes? Is there a handful of entities that have those nodes? Is it a lot of people? So to answer this question, it might be helpful to ask yourself how easy it is to set up a node. Are there any requirements that make it hard to be an active member and run a node? For example, hardware requirements that make it expensive, or maybe that are not so accessible. Another thing to consider is where the nodes are located, and this comes also, for this you have to analyze two things. From a geographical perspective. So is there a conglomerate of nodes in a certain area? And this, when this happens, there are certain political events that can affect the network, the impact on the network. So we've seen, for example, the China Bitcoin ban that affected, at least temporarily, the network. And then another thing to consider is the location of the servers. And by that, I mean, can I run a node at home? Are all nodes in data centers? Which brings us to the next one, which is censorship resistance. So, for example, if all the nodes are in data centers of cloud providers, then the blockchain can be easily shut down if a government decides so. So simply you go to all the cloud providers that run the nodes for that blockchain, and there you go, voila, your blockchain is down. Another thing to consider is the evolution of the native token, the price of the native token. So this is a good indicator of the traction of the network. And also you should consider, for example, the transaction fees on that network. So how accessible is to build on that network. We've seen that, for example, with Ethereum, when there were high fees, those represented an obstacle for some of the projects. Another thing to consider is the adoption for DeFi and NFT solutions. So a network is as strong as its the community that it has. So you need builders, you need projects, you need community shapers. For example, if you bring Elon Musk to support your blockchain, it does not necessarily mean that the network is good, but this action can build traction, and it could actually enable the network to be better, to become better over the time if enough people have skin in the game and they start to create different enhancements, assuming, of course, the network isn't too centralized and you can do so. So for DeFi, we're looking for decentralized exchanges, for token swappings, for lottery platforms, for staking, for farming. And for NFTs, we're looking for support for different NFT projects, for marketplaces for NFTs. And also, we're looking at the variety of NFTs. So except the classical NFTs that we know, there are different flavors as well, such as generative art, PFP projects. So those for profile pictures, we've seen the Twitter inundated by different NFTs. For profile pictures, but also more interesting NFTs projects, such as NFTs as a proof of presence or NFTs for asset tokenization. Another thing you want to look into are the key trends with the ecosystem. So such as competitors or state of the market. So you should ask yourself, are there any competitors seeing light with the potential to disrupt, or maybe there are new projects that enable room for cooperation and even greater traction and adoption. Then it's the team. So this one, I think it's pretty straightforward. What is the team behind? Who are the brand ambassadors for your blockchain? Are these people trustworthy? Do they have expertise in the field and a well-connected network? All these factors influence the potential success of the blockchain, especially in the early days, but also potentially later. Then you should consider the number of tokens. So what are the economics of the blockchain? Is there a maximum supply cap? If not, is there a certain percentage of tokens that is being burned regularly? So we've seen, for example, with Ethereum, since the EIP 1559 during the London hard fork, that it has started to be burned. And there are also other blockchains doing this as well. So the main idea for this is that in order for an asset to be valuable, we need some sort of scarcity for it. And there are different ways to create this scarcity. Then we should look at the founding date. So when did the blockchain see light? For how long before the main launch people have been working and iterating on test networks, for example, before the launch on the main network? It's true that early projects are prone to have bugs and that still need to be solved, but also they offer greater opportunities if you're one of the main adopters or builders on such a blockchain. This was basically the framework. Now I invite you to look at some key characteristics that differentiate Solana from other blockchains. So Solana, it's a high-speed single-layer blockchain currently supporting peak capacity of 65,000 transactions per second and 400 millisecond block times with over 50 nodes. It's specifically built to scale transaction throughput with Moore's law, and there is no sharding required to achieve this throughput. Also, they state on their website that it's a network based on proof of stake, whose ambition is to deliver a decentralized network that will match the performance of a single node. And it comes with a very, very low cost per transaction, as you can see here. Just as a comparison, if we look at other blockchains as of June 2021, for example, the average cost for transactions for Ethereum was $40.34, and for Bitcoin $3.85, and for Cardano $0.45. So you can see here some key characteristics. So the first one, it's a single layer blockchain. So you might ask yourself, okay, then how do they scale? We know that scalability is the main issue with blockchains. And for example, Ethereum has been implementing sharding, wants to implement sharding for this. The second thing we're looking at is the number of transactions, which is very high, 65,000 transactions. If we're comparing it with Ethereum, it has around 20, and it is expected to process over 15,000 once it goes with sharding live. Then we have the block time, which is again very, very low. We have 400 millisecond block times. Ethereum has 10 seconds, and it's expected to go at 2. So there are all these things that sound really amazing when you see what are the key promises of Solana. But now let's look what make these things possible, and what are the trade-offs that enable this. So the first thing is that it uses, in contrast to other blockchain, Solana takes a different approach when it comes to the consensus model. And here we have a combination of proof of history and proof of stake. So we have the leader node that timestamps blocks with cryptographic proofs that some duration of time has passed since the last proof. And all the data is hashed into the proof most certainly have occurred before the proof was generated. The proof of history introduces a decentralized clock. So the decentralized clock does not rely on timestamps, but instead relies on hashes appended to a list, which connects them back to previous hashes. The node then shares the new block with the validator nodes that verify those proofs. The blocks can arrive at validators in any order because of the synchronization guarantee from proof of history. So Solana, because of this, Solana is able to break blocks into smaller batches of transactions called entries that are streamed to validators in real time before any notion of block consensus. Of course, there are a lot of more technical details. Feel free to look into them. But here I just want to offer an overview about what really it's new. So taking one by one, the first one was decentralization, governance, and token distribution. You can see here that for the community, a percentage of 28.89 is allocated, which is less than half. And I think to better exemplify the level of decentralization, we can look into a recent event that happened in September this year. So in September this year, Solana experienced an outage. So according to an official Twitter statement from Solana status, the network experienced an increase in transactions that peaked at 400,000 per second. So those transactions allegedly flooded the transaction processing queue and caused the network to fork. In turn, the forking led to excessive memory consumption and knocked down some nodes offline. And you can see here their approach. on Twitter what they stated. So the validator community elected to coordinate the restart of the network. The community is preparing a new release and instructions will be posted in Discord. So there has been critique around this, that the amount of authority which Solana network has in the problem, and the level, how the crew handled the situation, more like a hierarchical corporate rather than a powerful distributed system. However, it's also true that when different events like this occur, someone has to take action. We've seen in the past Vitalik when we had the DAO hack, but the actions of Vitalik were rather the result of the community voice. Going next, we're looking at the number of nodes, which is 1,074 validators on mainnet, which is actually pretty good. So when we're comparing with other blockchains such as Ethereum, it has 3,641, but we have to keep in mind that it's a much older project than Solana. So for a project that came quite recently, I would say that the number of nodes is quite good. But now we look at how easy it's to set up a node, and I put here the specification from their webpage, so you can see CPU with 16 cores, RAM 256 gigabyte. The networking specifications also are quite high. And the result of this, as you might guess, it's that it's pretty complicated. It's, if not impossible, to run such a node at home. And most of these nodes reside in in data centers from cloud providers. Also, if you don't keep your node up, you're penalized with slashing. So you're paying for this. So you really need to make sure that your node is up and running, which is pretty difficult and expensive to do so if you're not doing it in a data center. Now, who owns those nodes? With these high entry requirements to run a node, it's easy to imply that most of those nodes are run by institutions and wealthy individuals. And here you can see where these nodes are located. You can check by yourself. They have Solana Beach, where you can see a lot of details about the network. So as you can see, a lot of them are in the States, in Europe, and some of them in Southeast Asia. When it comes to censorship resistance, as we've seen with the event from September this year, it's very easy to put the network down, even by mistake. And also, since most of those nodes run in cloud provider data centers, this can represent an additional red flag. When it comes to the evaluation of the price of the native token, this looks very well. So we've seen a great traction and no red flags in the chart. So this looks good. The next thing is the adoption for DeFi and NFT solutions. And here we see a lot of traction. So we have DEXs such as Orca, Radium, or Serum. We have staking solutions such as Marinate Finance. We have yield aggregators such as Sol Farm, auction protocols such as Burn Finance, lending, Solent, marketplaces for metaverse assets such as Galactic Metaverse, platforms that allows users to mint and airdrop their tokens. So this can imply good traction for the community. And also in the NFT space, they're doing very well as well. The generative apes sold out in 8 minutes. There are various other private collections, a whole marketplace for NFT integrated in the platform and easy to access. Next, we're looking at the key trends within the ecosystem. One of these would be Wormhole, which launched with the support of Ethereum, Solana, Terra, Money, and Binance Smart Chain. So Wormhole, it's basically a generic cross-chain messaging protocol that allows communication, that acts as a communication bridge between Solana and other networks. So it allows existing projects, platforms, and community to move tokenized assets seamlessly across blockchain. Another thing that might be, another trend that might be interesting is the variety of languages that the Solana SDK supports, which means that this will build a lot of talent and a lot of builders in the community. When it comes to the team behind, we have Anatoly Yakovenko, an ex-employee of Qualcomm, that bring then Greg Fitzgerald, Doctor of Science in Physics and ex-developer. Also, they brought to the team a lot of talent from Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Dropbox, so a very strong team. When it comes to the number of tokens and the economics of the tokens, Solana, it's inflationary with the decreasing inflation until 1.5%. And then it has constant inflation. And the inflated Solana supply, Solana token supply is distributed to those staking, 95%. And 5% goes to the treasury fund to fund the ecosystem. Next, when it comes to founding dates, we've seen the white paper where Yakovenko presenting proof of history was in 2017. Then in 2018, February, he and Fitzgerald published the official version of the white paper and launched the internal test network. Then in 2018, Solana Labs have seen light. To 2020, they tested on the public network. On March 2020, it was a beta version of the mainnet. And in June 2020, Solana Foundation sees light. So even though it's a pretty young project, we can see that work has been done actually since 2017 for this project. And now some conclusions. So Solana offers indeed great speed, lowest cost per transaction, and amazing scalability. But it's always good to take these promises with a grain of salt and see what are the trade-offs behind, such as this, decreased decentralization, decreased censorship resistance, and disaster recovery. However, there is no blockchain to rule them all. They can happily coexist together. So there are different flavors of blockchain created for different types of users. Some users are ready to trade off security and decentralization for better user experience. Other users are anchored to maximize security and decentralization. And most importantly, there are more and more bridges that are being built to connect these ecosystems. That was it from my side.
Bianca, thank you so much. That was very informative and thorough. And I'm still trying to absorb it all. So there's so much great content here and so much to learn from, that's for sure. I personally did have a question in regards to the burning of tokens. So when it comes to the burning itself, are they burning the total token supply, or is it another coin that's being distributed that's that they're leveraging against to burn?
I was talking. Are you talking about the Ethereum? I was talking about Ethereum, about the tokens being burned.
Yes, just with their process, and if that process carries over into any of the other ecosystems.
For Ethereum, talking about Ethereum, because that's what I was talking about. Yes, they're burning some of their supply in order to create some sense of deflationary artificially.
Yes, yeah, makes sense. And it's the supply that already exists. It's not another branch or another type of token, correct?
And no, it's still the same token. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting.
It's been called the London fork, but it's actually compatible with the same token.
Yes, I see. Makes sense. And if I'm not mistaken, from what I gathered from the presentation, there's a hybrid model of the proof of history and proof of stake.
Yes, that's correct. That's for Solana.
Okay, and
So
is there? Sorry, apologies. Go ahead.
Yeah, these work hand in hand to provide better timing and to ensure that it's kind of all nodes comply to the same sense of time within the network, such that the blocks get to be released faster.
Mm-hmm. Is there still, however, a sort of threshold that would have to be reached for them to formulate a block, even no matter how much time has surpassed? Like, is there, I guess, a ceiling that can only contain so many transactions?
Yes, I think there was a slide here with the maximum. I think it was 65,000. That was the ceiling.
Okay.
So quite high, amazingly
Yes.
high.
Thank you so much for that clarification. And yes, as Yip is referring to here, to what I was possibly referring to, is the deflationary minting of new Solana.
Unfortunately, I don't have much information about that. I'll do my research.
Yes, no, we all are. We all are as well. Thank you so much. That was, again, extraordinarily informative. And we have our next speaker session coming up with Marcel in the next 4 minutes. So please do what you need to do. And if there are any other questions, or Bianca yourself, is there anything that you can guide us towards or even send in the chat that we can use as reference? That would be very helpful as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. It was nice being here, talking to you.
Yes, we're all having a great time here, that's for sure.